Hello, my name is Kaylani, and for this week's reading reflections, I decided to do 4 infographics that you can see on the left-hand side here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and right now I'll use this video to briefly go through them, trying not to read every single word, trying to summarize so I don't take 15 minutes of your time. Here we go. So for the first chapter that we had to read this week was chapter 6, and I decided to use this infographic to demonstrate the PASS acronym. The first P being prioritize instruction. So essentially teachers should prioritize instruction to capitalize on their time and to provide students with the most important information they need to gain understanding of the concept. I myself struggle to do this in many facets of my life, as you can probably see by my crazy infographics. And so this is definitely something I need to work on as an educator. The A is adapt instructional materials, methods. Oh, instructional methods, materials, or learning environments. Sorry, kind of late at night. So pretty much here, being able to incorporate adaptations into curriculum when necessary. These tailor the prioritized instruction to meet the individualized needs of students. As we've learned in all the readings this week, these adaptations are really important in order to provide an equitable education for our students with disabilities and our other students as well. Really, all students can always benefit from some form of adaptation. The first S is systematically teach with the SCREAM variables. Now this acronym was something I was not previously aware of. SCREAM stands for structure, clarity, redundancy, enthusiasm, appropriate rate, and maximize engagement. So this is pretty much a nifty acronym to help teachers with their instruction, to remind them that, hey, your lesson plan should have a very straightforward and thought out structure. It requires clarity of vocabulary, words, and unknown concepts. Redundancy in this situation is, beneficial because students will get that repetition of information. Should always be enthusiastic. Learning should never be boring. You should go at an appropriate rate with your lesson plan. You can speed up if your students are okay, slow down if they need more instruction. And to maximize engagement, your students should always be active participants in their learning. And then the final S is to evaluate the outcomes of your instruction. So with every lesson that you give, it's important that you are able to quantify if your students learned what they needed to learn, and to help students if some students are kind of falling behind, and to provide those accommodations if necessary. So really, these evaluations are important to monitor students' performance and to provide assistance when necessary as soon as the assistance is needed. Here's my metacognition. Pretty much everything I'm saying is metacognition. Going back, thinking about my thinking. So read that as you will. The next infographic here is one that demonstrates my inability to prioritize. This is from chapter 12, and I decided to try and make an infographic about the ways that we can adapt tests for students with special needs. I do like this infographic because it highlights strategies, but I do not like how word heavy it ended up being. I was insistent on having an explanation, connection, and a how/why for every strategy that I included. I'm not sure if I needed to do that, but I wanted to cover all my bases, and now I have this very chock-full infographic. We'll go through it very briefly. So first, administering norm reference tests. Strategies include using test accommodations, using UDL, using individually administered tests, teaching test-taking skills. This was something that I really enjoyed because I feel that most teachers just assume that students know how to take tests, but taking tests is an art. Improving examiner familiarity and requesting accommodations for high-stake exams. Over here, this was very interesting for me, adapting competency-based local and statewide assessment. So prior to reading this chapter, I never really put much thought into how other students did these statewide assessments. I just assumed that you take the test and whatever happens, happens for all students. But it was really interesting to learn that there are strategies, that there are accommodations students with disabilities can get. There are alternative assessments. They can require or they can request accommodations for the GED test when it comes to graduation. So it's really interesting, especially this AAS accommodations. I hope to use this knowledge to better help my students with disabilities make sure that, in the eyes of the state, that they are definitely competent. Moving on to adapting teacher-made and criterion reference tests. This was the section that I had the most experience in. So revising tests, adjusting test formats, and adjusting scoring procedures. Really showing that teachers need to utilize these strategies, because if a student's grade is a demonstration of what they know, but then the test is difficult for them, not because they don't know the material, but because the test itself is formatted in a weird way, then the student's grade is not going to be an accurate representation of what the student knows, which is an issue. Then we have curriculum-based measurement, CMBD. This was interesting, focusing on a long-term curricular goal and tracking progress up until that goal. That was really interesting to learn. Then we have performance assessments and portfolio assessments, two different types of assessments that are that stray away from traditional pen and paper, and that either allow students to demonstrate their content knowledge via a performance task where they're asked to label something or manipulate something or do something, or a portfolio assessment where the teacher keeps track, they keep a binder of some sort of a student's work, and progress is assessed, and they're graded based on how well they've improved, not so much like what they know at one certain point in time. This next one, I think, is one of my better infographics. Has this cute little sun right here. This is from chapter 1 of Professor Pineda Zapata's book, and it's creating an adaptation-friendly systems thinking classroom. The first point here we have is the triangle of support, consisting of personal supports, curriculum adaptations, and instruction and assistive technology. So pretty much here outlining that for our students who need support, there are many avenues of providing that support that teachers need to consider, such as a dedicated team for a student, any of the adaptations that we mentioned previously to give students accommodations for tests or assignments. And this part in particular was very interesting to me. Technological supports, I think, with the advancements of technology in every aspect of life, definitely a big player when it comes to providing our students with necessary accommodations. This next part is a quote. A teacher's goal is to maintain high levels of engagement as he or she delivers content and assessment activities. I feel like that quote speaks for itself. Your students need to be engaged and need to be active participants if they're going to retain any knowledge. If your students are just listening to you talk and are not mentally stimulated, they don't see any fun visuals, they're not engaging in any fun activities, they're just sitting there, then they're not going to learn what they need, what you want them to learn, what they need to learn. And especially for students with disabilities, that is a struggle enough for a student without disabilities. A student with disabilities will definitely need some help if they are not being engaged. So here I can connect to that because I love engaging my students, connecting fun toys to the lesson, connecting Legos to math, connecting drawing to phonics, all that good stuff. And this last learning here, not all instructional components may need adaptations, but teachers can plan those that do on the academic unit lesson plan. So I really love this learning because I feel like these accommodations are something that most teachers can prepare for, and it's better if we do prepare for them. And these are accommodations for all students, whether it's accommodating if a student gets distracted or accommodating if a student doesn't understand a point of the lesson. it's important to have, like in this picture, plan A, B, C, that the team can provide accommodations on the ready because it's already part of the lesson plan, regardless if you actually use the accommodation or not. It's just great to have that just in case. And lastly, we have the chapter 2 of Professor Pineda Zapata and Brooks's book, Making Accommodations and Modifications While Ensuring Rigor. Really loved this chapter because, it's that reminder that students always need to be challenged regardless of their academic level. So the first quote here is teachers can make students' needs or can meet students' needs with the help of tools that provide support. I really enjoyed this learning because it reminded me that that technology tools are not just computers. Tools are timers, tools are guidance maps, tools are audio recordings. Especially in this day and age, there are many tools that we can provide students that can help them learn in a more understandable way to them. And we really owe it to students to be knowledgeable of these tools, so that way when we see a need, we can fill a need and we know like what we can do. Next is accelerated learning for students requires differentiated instruction. I connect with this because I was categorized as gifted, not the correct nomenclature now. Now the word or the phrase is I have it here, students with giftedness. So that's something that I'm going to have to be mentally cognizant of, is using the correct nomenclature. But I love this learning because it demonstrated that these students need accommodations too, and that accommodations aren't just for our students with disabilities. Our accommodations can be for all students, and that our students with giftedness shouldn't just be given busy work. There are ways that we as educators can provide them with supplemental activities. We can compact the curriculum so they can move on if they already show content mastery. Again, really hitting that accommodations are for all students of all academic levels. And then lastly, instead of being concerned about whether the student can keep up with the rest of the class, focus on their progress. Rigor remains, and the student still accomplishes the learning target. This was very important because, like it says right here, teachers must remember that adapting tasks does not mean that they are watering down their curriculum. Teachers should focus on progress, not product, and should continue to challenge students and maintain high expectations for them, regardless of their ability or academic level. This is still something that I'm definitely working on with my students, trying to push my students who may be academically behind, but who I need to remember, I need to have these high expectations for them because I know that they can do it. I know that they can succeed. They just might need accommodations like more time, more assistance, more manipulatives, something that I can provide that can get them to the top of this mountain, albeit if it's not in the time that the other students are doing it, not important. They're meeting that goal on their own time. Awesome. Did what we had to do. And those are my reading reflections with a minute and a half to spare. Thank you.